Hello and welcome to this week's Ruby Shoes podcast, bringing you the very best of local entertainment across East Anglia each and every week. Well, we're back after a tour of both Liverpool City and the City of Music, of course, and a tour of North Wales. We took producer Ruby, our four-legged furry producer, for some much-needed R&R in the Welsh hills and along their massive sandy beaches. It was absolutely blissful. While we're away, we did manage to fit in a review of Makings of a Murderer with Colin Sutton, who came onto the Ruby Shoes podcast to tell us about his career in the Met Murder Squad. So you can always listen back to that episode if you want by clicking on the links in our Facebook page, and his tour as well, of course. We got back just in time to visit Hauntings by Gerard Logan, and Harrison, our guest reviewer, kindly popped along to the new Wolsey Theatre while we were away so that we didn't have to miss the chance to see Footloose the musical. Now, if that's not enough this week, we've also got two special guests. The first being the MD of the Limelight Theatre Company, and then we talk to the director and one of the principal actors in A Doll's House, which is coming to the Madder Market Theatre in Norwich this month. Then, as always, we've got a host of up-and-coming shows you won't want to miss. So while we headed off to Wales last week, we stopped off en route to Stamford. So we're here for the Ruby Shoes podcast, and this particular theatre we're at is outside of East Anglia. We're in a place called Stamford, which I think, Steve, is in Lincolnshire.
It is in Lincolnshire, I believe, yes.
And the reason we're here is because we come to see Colin Sutton, who is putting on a performance which is called The Makings of a Murderer 2. You might remember on the podcast a few weeks ago we interviewed Colin Sutton about this particular show because it came to the Spa Pavilion of Felixstowe. It also came to the Ipswich Regent Theatre, and we managed to miss it both times because we were away. So we followed him up the country so that we can come and review his show. Stamford, if you've never been before, we're quite impressed, aren't we?
It's absolutely lovely. We've just had the most fabulous meal.
Yeah, nice Turkish meal we enjoyed. The whole place is all full of local sandstone, so it's all sort of yellow buildings. It's really, really pretty.
And very ancient, very, very ancient. Beautiful. It's lovely.
It is beautiful. We've counted at least, 4 churches in the town centre so far?
It must be something like that.
Absolutely gorgeous place. And the whole town is over 1,000 years old, so you've got a bit of history as well with tonight's podcast. So we're going to see this, The Makings of a Murderer 2, as I say, with Colin Sutton, and then we'll tell you afterwards what we think about it. Okay?
Brilliant.
It sounds good to me. Oh my goodness, so what do we think of that, Steve, then? The Makings of a Murderer 2 with Colin Sutton.
Well, I found it intriguing on lots of fronts, not the least of which was an insight into
how the police work.
How the police work.
Yeah. And the frustrations they must go through when they catch and, they give all the evidence to the CPS, and then they go, no, maybe not. No, we're gonna throw that case out, or we're gonna, look at something different, or it gets buried for several years, or
It certainly made me think more about how actually the police are
their hands are tied, aren't they?
Their hands are tied, and they're so much more concerned with the victims than we might realise.
Yeah, no, definitely. But what he did talk about was 2 huge cases of serial killers, basically. Levi Belfield and also Delroy Grant, and how they were both caught, convicted and locked away basically for life, thank goodness, and talked about how many hundreds of women have been saved because of that. And also he talked about some other cases as well, so it was a really, really fascinating evening. But interestingly, he's just a very good storyteller. He managed to inject humour into it as well. So, you weren't sort of sitting there thinking, oh, this is all doom and gloom. It's actually a really interesting couple of hours, wasn't it?
It was fascinating. It also showed just how much more there was to each of those cases, and presumably so many others.
Yeah.
Where what you actually see is the headline, you see what they're charged with, but what you're not seeing is all the stuff that went on that either wasn't part of that particular case.
And how the media get it wrong as well sometimes.
And how the media get it wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
So well portrayed, so well explained.
Definitely. Makings of a Murderer 2, Colin Sutton. It's doing its tour around the UK. If you get a chance to see it, I can highly recommend it. Once we made it home again from Wales, we were straight back out the door that evening, hot-footing it over to Sudbury to see Gerard Logan performing Hauntings. So we're here at the Key Theatre in Sudbury tonight for something very, very different. We came to see The Hauntings. You might remember I interviewed Gerard Logan all about The Hauntings, and we've come along to review it.
Tonight, I want to share my thoughts with you on a topic not much discussed. The silent, the unseen. What am I talking about? Well, I am referring to that which is present, but is either beyond our perception or meets with our disregard. A thing or being may be with us, even beside or all around us, though we do not see or hear it.
What a very different evening, don't you think?
Well, it was fascinating, especially the atmosphere that was created, the little bits of music that popped in every now and then, really, and one bit made us all jump in our skins. What a different evening, and how wonderful that you can play such someone can bring such pictures in your mind.
It was really powerful, wasn't it? So it was a one-man play, and it was 3 different ghost stories, but he didn't just read them, he performed them, and you were there. You could see all the pictures in your mind and everything, and you could have heard a pin drop. And actually, we bumped into some people we knew, a couple that we knew, and he said, I was absolutely transfixed. We were talking in the interval, and I thought, that's a really good word. That's exactly how I was. I was quite literally on the edge of my seat, sitting, and I thought it was a good job that lights are down, because I'm sure I got my mouth wide open. It was just really, really good. So definitely recommend it. The Hauntings by Gerard Logan, and you can also listen back to the interview that I did with Gerard 2 or 3 weeks ago. Just have a little look for The Hauntings on our Facebook page for Ruby Shoes, and you'll see it there. But a really good evening. Well done, Gerard, for literally having the audience in the palm of his hand for the whole, couple of hours, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yes.
Very clever. The Limelight performers are offering you the chance to see a grand night for singing this week at the St John's Mills Theatre in Ipswich. It's Roger and Hammerstein's music from well-known and much-loved classics, as well as their lesser-known works. And here to tell us more is their musical director, Vanessa Mitchell. Vanessa, thanks so much for joining us for the Ruby Shoes podcast. Tell us about this show, first of all. What brought about the idea for a grand night for singing?
Well, this is a show that Limelight were looking to put on in 2020, and then COVID had other ideas for us. And it was something that we'd had on the back burner for a long time. It comprises of over 30 Rodgers and Hammerstein numbers from various different musicals over the years. And it's something that was put together as a review by Walter Bobby, first done in the 90s on Broadway. And it literally uses like 5 cast members. And a live band, and it's looking at love, old love, new love, unrequited love, familial love, all sorts. So it's quite a nice exploration of love in general.
It sounds wonderful. So tell us about the sort of songs that we can look forward to. You're giving us a nice sort of broad brush there and saying it's all about different sorts of love, which, I mean, who would not want to hear songs about love? But just perhaps give us some examples, because I think there'll be ones that people will know and think, oh, I love that song so much.
So some of the musicals that the songs come from include well-known ones such as Oklahoma and The King and I, down to some that, to be frank, I'd never heard of, Allegro and Pipe Dream being 2 of those. actually my favourite ones probably don't actually sound like they're much to do with love, but Wash That Man Right Out of My Hair.
Oh, I love that song.
From South Pacific, which I absolutely love, and the guys are doing a fantastic job of that one. Shall We Dance from The King and I?
Oh, yeah, etc.
Which is lush. Oh, I know. There are just so many lovely ones in there. Some I knew, some I didn't. Some of them have been sort of stitched together. Some are done completely separately on their own. And it's just so much fun.
Oh, wow. And are you sticking to the original arrangements or have you been tweaking with them?
We haven't tweaked them, but they are tweaked. The classic being Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. And it's one of those that threw the cast and band into a little bit of, oh, really? Okay. Because it starts off in 4/4, goes into 2/4, and then into 3/4, and it keeps going backwards and forwards. And it's one of those where everybody's so used to it being in 3/4, and it just sounds completely different when done in a different, different time. It's just
Different time signature.
It's amazing.
Oh, that sounds really, really good. Now, it's all going to be performed this week at the St John's Mills Theatre in Ipswich. It's a lovely central location, and there's parking too there, I believe.
There is, yes. Yeah, it's a smallish car park, but there's a car park at the back. It's a really nice little intimate theatre.
It's a really lovely theatre, isn't it? It's got a lovely atmosphere about it. So it's a fantastic place. Is that somewhere that the Limelight performers would usually choose? Is that your go-to place, or is this just for this particular show?
This is our first time at St John Mills. Hoping it won't be the last. But yeah, no, it should be good. It's a theatre I'm familiar with because my daughter's in another group that performs there. But no, it's our first time there. We perform in various different theatres around Ipswich.
Amazing. And tell me a bit about the cast as well. Tell me how many people are in the cast and tell me a little bit about each of them, if you can.
So we've got 2 males, 3 females. So it's a really small cast. The characters that they play are actually named after the original people that performed this particular show. So the first time it went out, it was with these particular named cast members, and those names have stuck. So we have got Gavin Roper, who is playing Martin. I've not worked with Gavin before, but I know that others within our team have. Brilliant. He's coming out of retirement to do this one, although he does say he might go back into retirement afterwards. We've got Ethan, who is very new to Limelight. We've not had him in our teams before. Young lad, local to Ipswich. He's playing Jason. We've got Natasha Stevenson, who I know a lot of people will know. She's been part of Limelight from the get-go. Great to work with. She's been absolutely brilliant, particularly supporting me with sort of choreography, which I'm not the strongest on, and she's absolutely superb at. She's playing Lynn. We've got Amelia Norton. She is playing Vicky. She's completely new to Limelight as well, which is lovely. It's nice to have sort of completely different people coming in. And she comes from Colchester, so she's been coming up for rehearsals all the time. So she's been absolutely brilliant doing that. And lastly, we've got Naomi Clark, who is actually my daughter, who is playing Alison. She's sort of a showgirl type character. So should be quite good fun. But they've been absolutely brilliant. Gavin's done a bit of directing before, so that's quite nice because that means that, you know, they've been absolutely brilliant helping me get sort of all set on stage.
It sounds a really friendly group as well, and I imagine you're always looking for new talent, people from maybe other organisations that want to just sort of hop across and do something with you, and you'd be sort of welcome to hear from anybody like that, would you?
Oh, absolutely. We always put things out for open auditions. We love to have new people joining us. We've got a core of people that sort of tend to feature either actually in or supporting the various different things that we do. But yeah, it's always nice to have sort of new people come in And this particular group has been just so much fun.
Well, that's good, because especially this close to the performance, usually as the musical director, you might be quite strung out, I think, because it's so close. But clearly you've really enjoyed this because you seem very, very relaxed.
I have. It's been hard work. Sort of getting everything prepped initially was probably the biggest issue. But no, I've had so much fun working with such a great cast, and now with the band as well. So it's really good fun.
Fantastic. So tell us the most important thing. How do we get hold of tickets, and how do we find out more about Limelight performers?
So you can go to limelightperformers.co.uk as website, where all our sort of current and future shows are, and all sorts of information as to how to join us. We have various different groups that run. We have a regular group on a Wednesday. We're looking to put a youth group together from January, Limelight Young Performers. So all of that information is available on our website. And if you search for the John Mills Theatre or for Eastern Angles on the internet, you'll be able to book tickets, because it's all booked through Eastern Angles, who are based at the Sir John Mills.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I wish you and the cast for a great night of singing all the very best, and a superb run, of course. And thank you for talking to us here at the Ruby Shoes podcast.
Thank you very much.
Now, while we were away last week, our wonderful guest reviewer, Harrison, was at the new Wolsey Theatre.
Hi there, this is Harrison Shorten, and you're listening to the Ruby Shoes podcast. The following is my review for Footloose, which I saw this Monday at the new Wolsey Theatre. Its West End comes to Ipswich again, and quite frankly, it was a sensational show. The cast were amazing. I'm not sure how many of them are from the West End originals, but they gave it their all here on this tiny little Ipswich stage. The acting was exactly as you would expect for a West End musical style performance. A couple of shout outs there. The actor that played Wren, I thought really gave it his all. His singing voice was absolutely incredible. And him, as well as many of the other actors, had brilliant comedic timing. A particularly interesting factor of the show for me was the how do I say this word? The multi-instruments. Loads of the actors were sort of back and forth between the band at the back as well as the main stage. There was saxophone players. The actor that played Vi, she was fantastic. The bass player in particular was really funny, as typical of a bass player who was just really cool, really sound. He was a brilliant actor and a fantastic bass player as well. But yeah, the music was all the Footloose greats that you know very well and love. Let's Hear It for the Boy was one of my favourite songs. Really performed well. The acting was absolutely top notch. The set design, I always enjoy at the Wolsey. It's amazing how every different show I see there, it looks completely different every time. Hats off to the backstage department. Yeah, so all in all, Footloose is on until October the 26th of this year. So get your tickets whilst you can. This has been Harrison Shorten for the Ruby Shoes podcast. Thank you very much.
Finally, for this week, A Doll's House is on at the Madder Market Theatre from October the 22nd. Norwich Players Theatre Company next month present Henrik Ibsen's Doll's House at the Madder Market Theatre in Norwich. Nora seems to have it all: a successful husband, adorable children, and a beautiful home. But her acceptance of the status quo is about to undergo a profound change. Is this picture-perfect life anything more than an act? And what happens if she's no longer willing to play her role? Well, to find out more, I'm joined now by the director of A Doll's House, Chris Lloyd, and also Sabrina Poole, who's playing the role of Nora. Welcome, both of you, to the Ruby Shoes podcast.
Hi. Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you, if I may, as director. Just outline the story for us of A Doll's House a bit more.
Right, I will. No spoilers, though. Not telling you what happens. Basically, we meet Nora, who is living a lifestyle which is seems to make her very happy. She has everything. She has 3 children. She has a husband who adores her. She adores him. He's just got himself a new job with lots more money, and it's Christmas. So she comes in with all the Christmas presents at the beginning, and it's all looking blissful and exciting. Then a friend turns up from her childhood, and in the scene with her friend from her childhood, a lot of interesting stuff comes out from Nora about what's been happening during her marriage, a trip to Italy that she took with her husband because he was terribly ill, how she financed the trip. And we find there's a whole load of stuff going on underneath the surface of this blissful life, which is very worrying for Nora. The friend finds it very worrying. It seems Nora's borrowed some money from a moneylender. The moneylender is asking for the money.
Don't tell us too much.
That's all I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
The moneylender was asking for the money. The play was written in 1876, when, of course, a wife would not have been able to borrow money like that. We've set it in 1950, when similarly a wife would not have been able to borrow money like that. So I think it's very interesting. I've tried to show that it still has all sorts of relevance nowadays. And that's it for the story, not telling you any more.
Perfect. I'm already very intrigued. And I'm going to come back to you, Chris, because I want to know why you picked that particular play to direct. But Sabrina, let's bring you into the conversation. As Nora, it sounds like a very complex part to play, but actually probably quite a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, both is so much fun. I mean, Chris and I were literally just discussing, it is one of the greatest female parts written for the stage. Nora's a classic, and she's so complex, and there's so many different layers to her. And sort of bringing in all sorts of this historical ideas that we've been discussing, and worryingly, things that apply to the late 19th century apply just as well to the mid 20th century, and it comes to women. And you know, she starts the play in, as Chris has said, sort of having it all, and then steadily things start to fall apart, and just exploring Nora as a character and how she develops, how she changes, and the emotional journey she goes on is an absolute joy. A massive challenge, but an absolute joy.
I bet it is. It must be like sort of unpeeling the layers of an onion, I imagine, and sort of. I've just called you an onion. I didn't mean that, but you know what I mean. You're going to see Nora as completely one person, and then by the end of it, are we as an audience, are we going to still like your character, do you think?
Well, so that is a really interesting point. There's certain points where you're not supposed to like Nora. Some of the stuff she does is quite worrying, and the naivety and innocence that she shows, especially for modern day women, they're the kind of women that you'd be like, really? But hopefully maybe by the end you can really get on her side, and understand the journey and where she's come from, and where she ends up.
And probably think, thank goodness that didn't happen to me and I'm just watching it as an audience member. I love those sorts of plays, yeah. That should be amazing. And Chris, why a Doll's House? What made you think, you know what, I've got to bring this to Norwich, to the Madder Market?
Well, I think Sabrina's just said it. I mean, it is one of the play, well, I believe, probably the play that has one of the most interesting lead female roles that I can think of that's been written. The fact that it was written so long ago, that it caused an absolute scandal when it was first put on the stage because of the way in which the woman was presented to the audience and the way Nora presents to the audience. And it still has some scandalous things in it, really. It's still very, very relevant to today. And I think as a woman director, it's wonderful to direct a play which has strong women's roles in them. And this one has not only the lead role, but then the friend who comes from back in her youth is a very strong female role. The male roles in it are equally multi-layered and interesting. They're not two-dimensional. Ibsen creates very, very three-dimensional characters. And as a director, it's an amazing experience to work with actors who are delving into all those layers and trying to develop, in this case, developing very effectively these very rounded, very, very conflicted, often characters, and giving them to us on the stage. I mean, it's really a challenge, and they're certainly rising to it. I have a wonderful cast.
Oh, that's really wonderful. That's good to hear, isn't it? Oh, that's lovely, Sabrina. So have you actually performed, Sabrina, with Norwich Players Theatre Company before? Is this something that you two have worked together a lot, or is this quite new to you? How did that work? Don't forget, you can always get in touch with us via our Facebook page at Ruby Shoes Podcast. We'd love to hear all about your forthcoming plays, any comedy nights, or perhaps your panto, so we can tell everybody else. And remember, you can always listen back to any of the Ruby Shoes podcasts via Apple and Spotify, or just click on the podcast links on our Facebook page, and you can follow us there too for all the latest entertainment news where you live.
She works
I'm Steph McIntyre. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat more about live theatre and all kinds of entertainment next week. In the meantime, do check out our socials at Ruby Shoes Podcast. We're on Twitter. And what a great theatre company you've got! You've got so much talent that you are able to swap roles and have a great week. Direct and be producer. If you can hear the barking in the background, I apologise. That will be our four-legged producer, who's called Ruby, who, whenever I get on a microphone, without fail, decides, do you know what, I just need to puck at someone going past. So I apologise for that. If you want to see A Doll's House, it's between the 22nd and the 26th of October at the Madder Market Theatre. Tickets, you can call the box office 01603 620 917, or you can book online at maddermarket.co.uk. Please do send the rest of the cast our good wishes. It sounds fascinating. I love anything that keeps you in suspense, and it starts off as one thing and turns out to be something completely different and is completely unguessable, and that's what A Doll's House sounds like to me, and it sounds amazing. Chris, from your point of view, was it always one of those sort of bucket list plays that you thought, I want to direct that at some point?
Yes, yeah, definitely. There are certain things that I've wanted to direct, and this has been one of them. I've directed and I've acted in other Ibsen plays when I was much younger myself. I was in Hedda Gabler, which is the other great Ibsen play for women that is so interesting. But yes, Doll's House has been definitely way out there on my bucket list for a very long time. But I've never really felt confident that I would find a cast with other groups I've worked with that could meet the challenge. In Norwich Players Theatre Company, we have some amazing talent, and I think, and we do open auditions anyway. In Norwich, there is amazing acting ability. So, yeah, this had to be it. I wanted to do it. So, yes, and I'm doing it.
Perfect timing on both your fronts. Thank you so much, Sabrina, and also Chris, for the Ruby Shoes podcast. I'll break a leg. It's going to be amazing, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Next week, TikTok sensation and comedian Henry Rowley chats to us on the Ruby Shoes podcast ahead of his appearance in Norwich at the beginning of next month. In the meantime, here's some more great shows you might want to check out.
What's on across Suffolk with Stephanie McIntyre, sponsored by Ruby Shoes Podcast, your weekly entertainment news podcast. Available from your smart speaker, Apple, Spotify, or you just follow Ruby Shoes Podcast on Facebook and click on the weekly podcast link to listen.